and share my screen. Perfect. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome on joiners. Welcome to a new online experience on our platform. I'm really excited to start this appointment and to be here. But we have a quick presentation. I'm Giuseppe, and today I'm not alone. You can see next to me, I don't know if on the left or on the right, my colleague Fabio. Hi, Fabio. Are you ready?
Hi, guys.
And
yes, I'm ready.
Good. And we are both part of Joiner's marketing and communication team. However, the protagonist of this event is James Twomey, who will bring us into the dynamics of a creative and impactful CV. Hi, James.
Hi everyone. Thanks for coming.
We are ready to start, but first we would like to present Joiners and to say something to you.
Yes, just a super brief introduction of Joiners before leaving the stage to James. So Joiners is the app where you can find the job that best suits your ambitions. On Joiners, you can express your preferences for your job seek. So you can express the field of work you want to start or continue your career, and also those pluses, namely the values and advantages you want to find in a company that reflects your dreams. Then once you selected the fields of work and plus, you launch the Joiners AI. This is our artificial intelligence model that our developer developed here in our office in Milan. And it will read hundreds of job offers on your behalf and show you those that match your profile and your preferences. So if you say, let's say that you want to work in Milan in the marketing area as a brand manager, and you want to find a company that cares to sustainability and allows you to do smart working, working from home, with in a young and dynamics environment, then you launch the Joiners AI, and it will pick only those job offers that will allow you to do this, that reflects your ambitions. And it classifies all the job offers in order of compatibility with your profile and your preferences. And once you click on one of the job offer, you will find this screen. So the Joiners AI reveals the job offer for you, making in the first line a quick summary of the most important elements that are essential for you to make the right choice. Then you will see which elements of the job offer reflect your preferences, and then how much your profile is reflects the company requirements. Then once you decide that this job offer suits your ambitions, you can just upload your CV in different formats, and you can use it to apply for free to as many internship, entry-level and graduate programs opportunities as you want on Joiners. Then we don't have only job offers, but also the online experiences, like the one you are participating right now. Giuseppe, tell us what is special about the online experience.
Thank you, Fabio. Yes, online experiences are free, interactive and digital appointments in which students and young graduates who belong to our very large community can meet managers, recruiters, but also other professionals like James to know more about a role or a company that might interest you. And we think that online experiences are the best way to live the world of work, even if you are still studying. But if you are looking for a job, one of the first things to do is writing a CV, right, James?
The most important.
But if you want to stand out from other candidates, your CV needs to be creative, impactful, and other adjectives that we will discover in some minutes. And how to do this, James Twomey, career coach and also CV writer and other job titles, a lot of job titles. It's up to you, and the stage is yours. We can start.
Cool. Thank you, guys, and thanks for joining us. Firstly, obviously, I'm English. So please, if you don't understand or I'm speaking too quickly, just give a nudge in the chat or ask a question. I'll try and be as clear as possible. So to start, a little bit about me and why I know about CVs. Don't take it that I could be anyone. I'll try and explain how I became somewhat of an expert. So I was perhaps in your situation, we'll say 10 years ago, maybe a bit more. I just finished my university degree, had a degree in physiology, relatively useless. I hope there's no physiologists listening. But I didn't really know what to do. So I went traveling like anybody else, ended up in New Zealand, and fell into a recruitment job. It was the quickest job that hired me, frankly. There was no special reason. And I worked in recruitment for the next 10 years, initially in New Zealand, then I came back to the UK, working in all sorts of different industries. It might sound a bit shallow, but I sort of followed the money. So when an industry was booming, I sort of went and recruited there. It's hard to recruit in an industry that's struggling. So I did a bit of oil and gas, I did some pharmaceuticals, some construction, finance, legal, everything and anything. And the one thing I noticed when I was recruiting was the amount of extremely talented people or extremely clever people or well qualified that had awful CVs. You would get people with 30 years legal experience arguing cases in the Supreme Court that would have the worst one-page, badly written Word documents. And I said to myself that it's actually crazy that these people are getting overlooked for jobs just because they're terrible at writing, not because they're terrible at what they're doing, but they're terrible at allowing other people to understand what they're good at on a piece of paper, which is all a CV is just a piece of paper, sort of writing a compelling argument as to why you are better than the other 15 people that sent in a piece of paper. So I started to work with these people about, hey, look, why don't we try and improve this? You're obviously a talented candidate. Why don't you have a better CV? And started doing that on the side, and then realized that there's a lot more enjoyment in CV writing and helping individuals than there is recruiting for crappy large companies, thanklessly. So I started doing that started doing it part-time 7 years ago, and I've been doing it full-time for the last 5. And there's a few things I've learned that are sort of either common mistakes or things that people don't really understand about the job application process sort of from the outside. If you're not working in recruitment, you might not realize how the job application actually goes. So to keep it simple, there are 3 stages to a job application, any job application pretty much with any company that's sort of more than 10 people. There is the ATS stage. Now that stands for Applicant Tracking System. It's a software that all companies use, and basically what that does is it's AI that reads every CV and then ranks those in order of how good it thinks they are against the job application. So unfortunately, with sort of LinkedIn and modern job applications, jobs can get 400, 500 applications or silly numbers. I think Deloitte posted an example last year where they had a junior project manager that received 1,800 applications. No human being in their right mind is going to read 1,800 applications. So every company uses ATS software to rank all the applications. Now, the inference from that is you have to be optimized for ATS. And we'll go into a little bit later about how to do that. But the first hurdle to overcome, the stage 1, is the software. I jokingly call it the robot, but you have to get through the robot phase in order to even be seen by a human being. After that, next stage is generally somebody in HR or recruitment. These people tend not to be the people that actually do the job. So particularly with anything technical, any engineering or anything like that, they're not the experts in that role, but they are a key part of the process. Now they will get the robot's best 50 candidates, and they will go through them, and they will produce their best 10 or so, and they will pass those on to the hiring manager, which is stage 3, which is the technical expert, the person you'll be working with, the person that's making the hire, the person that actually knows what the job needs. And it's somewhat counterintuitive because the CV doesn't change throughout that process. So your CV has to be impressive to a robot, impressive to a non-technical person, and impressive to the technical person. And there's no point having the most beautiful CV for the technical person if it doesn't get through the robot stage, because you'll never be seen by a human being. So again, we'll go into it slightly later on, but there are things you have to do on a CV that you perhaps wouldn't normally do or don't think make any sense if you were just handing it to the person that was making the final decision. But half of the battle is getting to that person rather than just being in front of them anyway. So there's things you do for each different stage that are slightly different, slightly counterintuitive. Some of them can be a bit repetitive, but all the research says if you do these things, you'll get more views, more phone calls, more interviews, and ultimately get the job you want ahead of other people. So we'll move on to CV basics. Now, this is quite important. Some of you may never have written a CV before. There's all sorts of advice online about what you include, what you don't include. And really, the answer is very simple. You include stuff that adds value. And you don't include anything that doesn't add value. And I appreciate adding value is different depending on what job you're going to and everything else. But ultimately, if you're writing something and you think, oh, does my love of reading help this position? If the answer is no, then you don't need to include it in your interests. But if you're going to be a teacher, if you're going to work in a sort of, I don't know, an agency that reviews books or films, then those interests do add value. So it's not a case of interests don't add value. It's a case of, for the right job, the right thing does demonstrate a side of your personality or a side of your away from work that's important. Now, obviously, you include anything that adds value. You include any professional experience. And again, that is different at whatever stage of your career you're at. So if you're a junior person, then any experience is valuable, whether that is completely unrelated. If it's retail work, but you're applying to be an engineer, then there's still elements you can do that show skills or competencies that you are wanting to demonstrate. So that can be problem solving. You can talk about, well, yes, obviously, if I want to work in nuclear engineering, I'm not solving the same kind of problems that I did in retail, but you can also still demonstrate, oh, I solved customer problems, I solved supply chain problems, I solved, even if it was shift patterns, it demonstrates a skill that's important. So there's always a way to include your professional experience in a way that is going to be something, take something from it transferable and move it to the destination you want to go to. So those are those are the key headlines to include everything that adds value. And you do that in a number of ways. Sections will change depending on your career and the stage you're at. But as a general rule, you want to have your name, obviously, your contact details. This is actually really important. People sometimes send, I've received multiple CVs as a recruiter with no way of contacting the person. It's a really basic error, but it stops everything in its tracks at dead one. So it's really important, but it sounds silly, but some people do forget. Then you want to have an executive summary or a personal summary, which isn't too long. You've got to bear in mind that people reading these have maybe 100, maybe 50 CVs on their desk. So if you've written a 2-page summary, you're immediately going to annoy them. They're not going to read it. They're going to put them off. So you want to have a summary on there, but you want to keep it really short, 5-6 lines, and have it actually meaning something. Don't just repeat what the other information that's in the CV. Don't tell me you've got a master's degree if I can see slightly further down the page that you've got a master's degree. That's not helping me, the reader, understand. So it's just 3, 5, 6 lines, something really short about why you're interested, what you've done previously that is related, and how you are different from other candidates, be that your experience is different, be that your attitude is different, be that I can demonstrate a lot of leadership, not in a professional setting per se, but whatever it may be, just have that piece of information short and sharp at the top. You then want your education, of course. That's really important for people just coming out of education. And you want key details from the education that are gonna matter to the reader, not information that matters to you, information that's going to matter to the reader. So that is your degree classification. I'm actually not sure if it's the same in Italy, but we're first class, second class, third class, or whatever it may be, an American GPA, if you will. That's important. If your job is related to your studies, then you want to have your key courses, key modules, your thesis title, but only if it's related. If you're applying to a management consultancy job with a physiology degree, like I did, then they don't care that my thesis was about knee injuries in long jumpers or whatever it may be. So it all boils down to the same thing. Everything is good information as long as it's adding value, and it's all useless information if it's not. Carlo, thanks for your question. I will do some questions at the end. I've got sort of 20 minutes budgeted for that, so we will get to anything that people do want to ask, or if they want me to repeat anything, if it's not clear or anything.
James, sorry, just one sec. Sorry for interrupting you.
No.
Just wanted to say that at the end, before or late after the session, the Q&A session, James is also available for a CV check. So if you guys want your CV to be checked by James and to get some precious advice, just cover the sensitive information and have it ready to be shared so that James can see it and give you some advice for improvements.
Sure.
James.
Or if any of you are shy in a group, I will leave my email and we can talk one-on-one if that's preferred for everyone. Yeah, basically, anything you want, we'll be able to do at some point. So CV basics, back to the key section. So you have your summary, your contact details, most important, your education, professional experience, so where you detail jobs, dates, they're important, but most importantly is explaining what you did in those jobs. But again, explaining in a way that speaks to the reader. So don't tell me useless stuff if you're going, yeah, the examples are endless, but just, even if it's retail, I keep going back to retail, but that's a job that everybody has, or hospitality work. Don't talk about managing cash if you're going for an engineering job, but talk about problem solving, talk about finding an efficiency, improving processes, improving services, whatever it be, managing a difficult client, managing difficult people, figuring out the supply chain, anything that is going to have relevance to the job you want to do or the job you're applying to, have that in there. Don't have, I cleaned up at 2 a.m. It doesn't matter, whatever it is. So that's how you determine it. It's people always ask for like a really clear, what should I include, what shouldn't I include? But that question's almost too basic. You have to understand what the reader wants to see in a person, what skills, what responsibility, what previous experience, and then work backwards from there and include the stuff that is relevant and don't include anything that isn't relevant. So that's the most important thing. And then what I always like to include is a section of core competencies or key skills. You can title it how you like, where you list the things that you can do. Now, this is actually a bit of a cheat, and we're talking, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but this is how you get around that first stage I talked about, the robot. Basically, the robot is just looking for keywords throughout your CV. And if you can include those keywords, even in a list form in core competencies, then you're going to get elevated above other candidates that haven't done that. So again, when writing a core competencies, there's no point you just listing your core competencies. What you need to do is list your core competencies that are important for this job. So I've seen lots of times people applying for really isolated jobs and they have teamwork in their key skills. And I'm like, well, that's actually probably working against you, because although everybody agrees teamwork is a great thing, this job is without a team. So you're telling me you're good at something that this job can't do. Same again for if you've graduated with an engineering degree and you're excellent with your numbers and you're excellent with problem solving and maths and numeracy. If you're applying to a job that doesn't require any of that, then there's no point telling me you're great at economic modeling or financial forecasting. So it's not just a list of your key skills, it's about matching those to the required key skills. So I would always say, actually, to change your key skills for every job you're applying to, if they're different jobs. Of course, if they're the same job with rival companies, then it can be the same. But if you're not sure what you want to do and you're applying for some engineering jobs, some consultancy jobs, some financial analyst jobs, then change your skills, because skills aren't always going to be applicable to every job. So that brings us on to how to optimize for the ATS software. So that's the first thing you do, is you match your skills to the skills they want to see. And most companies these days will make it very easy for you. Most job descriptions come with a list of key criteria, key responsibilities, whatever it may be. They have a bullet point section of what they want to see. Now, what you have to do is go through that and make sure, oh, yeah, I tick that one off. Oh, yeah, I tick that one off. Oh, yeah, I tick that one off. Because that is all the first two stages of the search you're doing. They're going, how many of these 100 applicants have got 4 out of the top 6 skills we need? And even if you do have those, but you're not demonstrating it or not showing it with the CV, then you're not going to get through. So again, it's a really simple reverse engineering job of, oh, they want to see somebody who's good at problem solving, good at teamwork, and has a BSc in finance. Great. I've got to make sure that my thing says BSc finance, my skills say teamwork, problem solving. It's really simple. It sounds paint by numbers, but that is going to elevate you from the bottom 50 of the 100 applicants to the top 50, which means you'll get seen by the person. And you can then get a little bit more elaborate and creative and good with it, and make sure that you match the keywords. So again, there's often, trying to think of a good example. There's in construction, for example, some people have health, and some companies have a health and safety officer. Other people's have a workplace health and safety officer. Others have all sorts of different acronyms. I can't think of one. Environment, safety, and health, ESH. So what you've got to do is you've got to speak the language of the company you're going to. So if you in your key skills, you talk about health and safety aware, then make sure that it says health and safety aware when you're applying to a company that has health and safety awareness is important to them. Make sure it says workplace, occupational health and safety, or workplace safety, if that's how they use their language, basically, is what I'm saying. So some companies will talk about customers, some companies will talk about clients. They're basically the same thing. but make sure you use the same language as the people. Some people talk about vendors, whereas other people talk about the supply chain. It's again, there'll be countless examples in whatever industries you want to go into, but make sure you're just using the same language as they do.
Sorry, James, regarding soft skills,
Mhm.
what is the best way to test your skills if you are a student or a young graduates and you have not experience?
To test them, or to
Yes, to test yes, to know which skills you have
well, hopefully you would know.
in order to write the correct skills.
Sure.
And not only team working or problem solving. That I think they are the skills that could have every people.
Sure. So firstly, I would hope that you would know in yourself if you are the type of person that enjoys working with customers or communicating well, or you're the type of person that prefers data and isolated tasks. So there's a little bit of, you have to have a bit of self-awareness. And if you don't know, then truthfully, the best thing for you to do is look at 50 job adverts and go through them and go, does that sound like something I want to do? Does that sound like something I'd be good at? Does that sound like something I'd hate? Does that sound like something I could get better at? And really work out what your skills are based upon your interests, your previous experience. So if you're reading a job description from an accountancy firm, it talks about statistical analysis or financial analysis, and you go away and go, I couldn't think of anything worse than sitting in front of spreadsheets all day, then you know that all of those sorts of skills, those modeling skills, those numeracy skills, analysis skills aren't for you. But in the same way, if you go read something that you're like, oh, actually it does sound, I do like talking to people all day. Maybe I do want to do something that's client facing, stakeholder management, anything like that. Sorry, Fabio, I think you.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, go for it.
Can be useful for them that I just share my screen 1 second, just to show them that on joiners, on the job screen, the job ads screen, and at the end, there are the skills required by the company. So you can find here, for instance, for this graduate program, Team System, which is an Italian company that makes software for works for the companies. It requires, let's say, organizational skills, creativity, problem solving, flexibility, English, precision, analytical skills. So according to James' advice, you can find here all the skills that are required to the company by the company for this specific job offer. And you just make sure to include, let's say, the FCE of English. If here they ask for English, then you can, if they are asking for Italian, you can say that you are mother tongue in Italian. Then if you are Italian, of course, then if they are asking you for creativity or organizational skills or other skills that are certificated by a certification, you just can include the certification or the level of skills you have. So this can help you to understand which skill to include in the section that James was talking about.
Can you leave that, put that back up a second, Fabio?
Yes, of course.
That'd be helpful, actually. So this is a perfect example.
Yes.
Of when, if I was writing my CV, I saw this job, I found it, and I go, actually, I do like the sound of that. How do I write my CV for this? Do you see those, whatever there are, 11 skills? I would go through those one by one, and I would make sure that every single word there was on my CV in some place. And so the easiest thing to do is to have a key skills or core competencies section, and you just have problem solving, creativity, customer service, customer oriented, flexibility, whatever, listed. So that covers most of them, and then make sure the other ones are covered in your summary section. So you say, hi, I'm a recent English graduate with 2 years professional experience working in retail. During that time, I boosted my problem solving skills, my analytical skills by doing whatever I've done. And that way,
I add just something just to conclude this topic about the skills. Here in Joiners, you can add and all the skills you already have. And when you add them, you can see that the score increases. So if you add all this skill, you are more compliant with the company requirements. And so the overall score of the job offer, so how much the job offer is compliant with your profile and with the company requirements, increases. So you can also, and once you check all the skills you have, the company will see it once you send them your CV. So it's also another thing that you can find on Joiners that can be helpful for you to check all the skills you already have.
Yeah, that would be perfect. And you can check them off as you check them off on your CV. So you know that not only are you saying you've got them, but you're showing them to the people that are reading it, that you've got them. So that's actually a really nice system that will make you go through your own CV and say, hey, I know I'm a great team worker, but if I didn't know who I was, and I just had this piece of paper, would I think I was a great team worker? And you know what? It says teamwork in my core competency section. I mentioned teamwork in my summary, and I mentioned teamwork in my experience section. So yes, definitely I have teamwork and I'm showing it. Perfect. Because that's another thing that people often fall down at. They're very good at telling you what they are. They're not very good at showing you what they are. So it's really important to not just tell you I'm good at teamwork, it's show it. So don't say, so if I have teamwork on my core competencies, that looks good. I'm telling you I have teamwork. Good. I'm going to get through the ATS stage. But what's better than that is to have teamwork in your core competencies, and then in your, let's say you're describing your education, you go, I led a 4-person project on whatever the project was on. We scored 97% on that particular module, that particular course, whatever it may be. So not only have you told them you're good at teamwork, you've shown them I'm good at teamwork. So that's the best thing you can do. And then you just repeat that for every skill that they want. And hopefully it's a short enough document that you can call it a CV. But that's all. Optimization is really simple. And I insult all of my friends who work in SEO, search engine optimization, but it's the same thing. It's really basic. All it is matching words with words, skills with skills, to make sure that on paper you look more well suited to the job you're applying to. So that's really important. Matching the job description language is really important. And the last thing is formatting. Now it's really tempting to deviate from boring, plain CVs, and Canva and other software has made that even easier, even if you're not particularly graphic design or technologically gifted, you can still make a pretty CV. Now that is fine, and a lot of them work really well, but there are some real basics to be aware of when you're creating the formatting and the style. Number one, the ATS software is quite basic. There's not a huge amount of money in organizing candidates, so the software doesn't have the world's greatest software developers working on it. So there's a number of things it can't do. So number one, it really struggles to read any text which is under size 10. So don't be tempted to put everything into size 8 or 9 so that it fits on the page nicely. Because often when you click apply, the robot that reads your CV first won't be able to read it and you'll score last. So again, we may be ahead of ourselves, but if you are getting a lot of automatic rejections, so if you're applying for a job and within 2 minutes you're getting an email saying, hey, sorry, thanks for your application, not today or not this time, then it's possible that you are failing because of, not because of the content of your CV, but the ATS compliance. So one of the first ones is size of font. The next big one to avoid is importing tables from Excel or anywhere else. So if you have, I don't know, all of your education, like the course name, the institution, and the results in Excel, and you import that into the document, often the ATS can't read that, so it just sees that as blank. It doesn't like any moving graphics. I'm sure you wouldn't do this, but people do try video CVs and they don't work unless it's a really fancy tech company that's asked for those. I would avoid those. It doesn't like too much color or too many text boxes or things, and anything overly designed can work against you. Now, I'm not saying that you should just go for a basic plain Word document, because of course how it looks is still important, but don't go to the most elaborate designed canvas that are on offer, because a lot of those aren't compliant and will get you automatically rejected. So yeah, big thing there is, the first thing I would do if I was getting sort of anywhere above 50% automatic rejection, so if you're applying to 10 jobs and you get 5, I would take a step back and go and check your ATS compliance. Now there's websites that you can do that for free on. If you just type it into Google, there's job checkers and stuff that will give you scores and tips on what's going wrong. And you just got to make sure that the formatting and style is soft enough for the bad technology to read it.
But James, what do you think in general regarding ATS?
I mean, ATS I hate because I think it's stupid and doesn't really help the job application process, but I understand that it's a necessary evil because you can't review 100 resumes. So it's an extra stage that is annoying for everybody, but it's the only way things can get done. So if we can't get around it, which we can't, then you have to optimize for it, and you have to make this is what I was talking about right at the start. You have to make decisions that you wouldn't necessarily make because of the ATS, versus if you were just handing it to the person that's making the decision. So yeah, it does mean that you have to use more boring designs. It does mean that you can be less creative in some senses. But to do the opposite would be pointless, because you're going to get auto rejected a lot of times if you're not complying with the boring formats and stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still plenty of room to have interesting designs. I can show you some designs that I've used that are all ATS compliant, and it's not just a page of on Word. It is more interesting than that. But just be careful. So whenever you've written it, I would say as soon as you finish your CV, send it through an ATS compliance checker, just to avoid the hurdle of getting automatically rejected.
So they are the best friend of recruiter.
Well, they're not, to be honest. Even recruiters don't really like them, because it does mean that as a recruiter you miss out on really good candidates.
But they save a lot of time.
Yeah, exactly. That's all it does, is it saves time and it reduces quality by maybe 10 or 15%. But everybody's willing to have that reduction in order to save the time. So is it a good thing? Not really, but it's not going anywhere. So you may as well do your best with it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
As always, the truth is in the middle.
Exactly. Exactly. And then finally on the CV itself, a question I get asked all the time, I actually got asked this about 40 minutes ago, is whether or not to include a picture. My answer is always no, don't include one. For the reasons we said at the start. Does it add any value? And for 99% of industries and professions, what you look like doesn't really matter. Now, there are some exceptions, of course, and a lot of the time it's not going to work negatively against you. Yes, Sylvia, I'll send some examples in a second after this. So having pictures, largely, it's not going to work against you. If you're applying in the UK, if you're applying in America, if you're applying in Germany, all the ATS software will automatically remove that anyway. I mentioned those three because they have quite strong anti-discrimination regulations. So they are desperate to remove as much personal information as possible. So anything about your marital status, number of children, religion, sex, age, gender,
Football team,
anything that can be discriminated against, they will take off. So if you're applying there, you may as well take it off yourself. Now, it's kind of a different story in the Middle East. So anybody who's planning on applying to Dubai or anywhere like that, they're much more receptive to having photos on there, and it's acceptable. I don't actually know what it is for Italy, but I would imagine you'll be somewhere in the middle where it's not a negative thing. It's not like, oh, what are you doing? But not too many companies are going to be that interested in what you look like. So to keep it simple, I would always say, no, don't bother with one. It takes up space, which you could use to demonstrate a skill or whatever you have. And sometimes it's going to get, or a lot of the time, it's going to get edited out before it gets seen by anyone anyway. So I would always say don't, but it's not a case of if you do it, it's the worst thing in the world. You're not going to get too many negatives from it. And then last thing before we apply, before we do any questions, is how and when to apply. So for this, you've really got to get into the mind of a recruiter. When does a recruiter want to see an application? And the answer to that is not Friday night. It's not Saturday. It's not Sunday. It's not late in the day at 4:45. So I would always advise people to try and apply just before the person that's going to be making the decision gets to their desk on a day where they're going to be productive. So apply between 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning on a weekday. Don't apply at midnight, because if you apply at midnight, then everybody who applies from midnight till 8 a.m. is going to be ahead of you in their inbox, in their queue. So I would always try and apply when you think they're going to be at their highest level of working. So generally speaking, that is the mornings and that is weekdays. How to apply is if you can find these one-click LinkedIn adverts or anywhere else, one click is always fine, and that means it makes it easy to send out 20 applications in a night or whatever. But if you can spend the time and find out who the person is that's going to be making a decision or head of that team or whatever, if you can find them either on LinkedIn or through their company website or get their email, then applying directly is always going to be better. It shows initiative. B, they're more like, you're not going to go through a ATS software if you get there. So it takes a little bit more time and it's a little bit more research, But if you can, instead of clicking one click on LinkedIn, if you can find out the person that's making the decision and sort of build a connection with them or send them it directly, you're going to see better results. But as with everything, there's a time trade-off, and you're better off making 100 one-click applications than spending 4 hours doing your FBI detective work to get to the right person. So it's a trade, but if it is easy to find the right person, then go to them rather than through any portal or any software that's going to get you there.
James, I just add the joiners to the platforms where you can find thousands of job offers. Not only Blue Social Network, that is LinkedIn.
Sure, I got you.
Also the black one, that is joiners.
I shouldn't have said those, should I? Is that the rules?
No worries.
It's a dirty word.
No.
No, so that's, yeah, I think, again, almost everything, there's no silver bullet, there's no correct way to do things. It's all about different options and what makes sense. But generally speaking, you want everything to add value and you want to do it in as few steps as possible for the recipient. So those are the two important things. Cool. I have some examples. Let me just pull them up and I'll share my screen. Hang on. I have examples of how you can be nice and varied with the style and still be ATS compliant. So if I just share my screen. So you'll see there's this one here, which is, it's not boring by any stretch. It's good use of space. I have taken off any personal information. This is, I made all this up, all these companies and stuff. But it's not just a boring one. You can be nice and creative, or you can be a bit more simple like this. And then there's the third one. Even like this, it could be a bit more interesting to look at, but it's still ATS compliant, which is the most important thing. Again, a couple of these have pictures on. That's a choice you can make. And again, if anybody wants to reach out to me afterwards, I can send these directly. Let me get rid of that. And I'll put my email in the chat right now if anybody wants to sort of speak afterwards. And yeah, that's it really. The most important message I want to get across is A, keep it simple, and B, make sure everything is adding value. It does get a little bit more complicated when you start deciding what adds value and what doesn't, but the basics are add value, keep it simple, and particularly if you're just coming out of university or whatever, don't be put off by quite a lot of rejections. It's a tough job market, and there's 400 people applying to every job. So it's not a case of, oh, I've got 10 rejections, I'm rubbish. It's, okay, I've got to keep going because half of this is a numbers game. I've got to get through just waves and waves of applicants. So I'll open it up to the floor if anyone has any thoughts or questions or didn't understand anything, please.
Sylvia has sent to me her CV.
Okay.
If you agree, I share her CV. Do you see my screen? I know it is in Italian, but yeah. If you want, we can comment the organization of the information
Sure. So my first thought is the basics are all fine. Clearly, the contact information, name is there. It's the right sort of spacing for everything. It's a good profile section. That's about the length we're talking about. Good skills, as long as they're matching whatever, and good information on education and experience. What I would say is your picture is probably taking up, I don't know, 15% of the page. I think that to me doesn't say that this is 15% of what's important. It's a large picture. So I would think about cutting that, and that would maybe give you some more space for more skills or whatever it may be, more skills that you've done, or a bit more information on your education, so that you can put in a course or a module that you've done that covers off something interesting. I just think that there must be something you've done in your life and career that is more relevant to whatever job you're applying to than a big picture of your face. And it's not a criticism. This is a document. You've got such limited space to showcase what you can do. To use sort of a large-ish percentage of it with a picture, probably not that necessary. I would also not bother to include your date of birth. Ageism happens all the time, and people get discriminated for being too young, so they're not experienced enough. People get discriminated for being too old. And ultimately, we've all got different experience at 25, 35, 45. There's 45-year-olds out there that are senior vice presidents because they've got 27 years experience with one company. And there's 45-year-olds out there that realized that they wanted to do what they wanted to do 10 years ago, and they have 6 years experience. So again, all boils down to what value does the date of birth bring to the document? And my answer in pretty much every case would be nothing. It doesn't, the right person for this job isn't born in a particular year or whatever. They might be 35 and gone to university late, or they might be 17 because they were a genius and passed high school at 13. It doesn't matter, is what I'm saying. So there's no value to it. So there'll be other things that you can add that can add value. And then I can't read it, obviously. I don't speak any Italian, but the experience section, generally speaking, bullet points would be more effective. I don't really know what this says, but you could probably say the same and more in 4 bullet points, and it'll still take up the same amount of space. And also there is a part of the job application process, which is, again, not something I like, but readers have really short attention spans. So if they've got a stack of documents, most people will go 10 seconds, yes, no, 10 seconds, yes, no, 10 seconds, yes, no. So you've got to be able to, in 10 seconds, grab the reader's attention, and bullet points are just more effective for that. They always will be. But as I say, this has got all the right sections. It's got the right level of detail. It fits nicely on the page. I would have to check. Like, I can't check a PDF, and I can't check somebody else's screen share. But the writing on the left-hand side might be too closely colored to the background for ATS software. But a simple scan checker will do that for you. But just make sure that that's the case, and if not, change the color or change the formatting and sizing. But generally speaking, those are the things I would say on this one to look out for. A few more bullet points, maybe a few more skills, or a bit more detail on the skills, with the space being made up by getting rid of the photo.
Thank you, James.
Oh yeah, and then one thing I didn't say, actually, on education, I would only have your most recent, I would only have, basically, the more education you get, the more senior you get, then you need fewer sort of steps back. So if you're a bachelor's graduate, then I would have my bachelor's and my most recent high school, or whatever it's called in Italy. Don't go any further. They don't care what you did at sort of 15 or even 11. And if you've got a master's degree, then just masters and bachelors. They don't care what you did in high school or your baccalaureate or whatever it's called. And again, if you've got a PhD, then a PhD and just a master's. Nobody cares what you did in your bachelor's. It's all about what people care about. And then once you've got a few years experience, or you're working in an industry where your education isn't sort of directly linked. So if you, unless you're a doctor working as a doctor, or you're a law graduate working as a lawyer, or an engineer, whatever, then you only need your highest level of education. So if you end up going into, let's say, like I did, I went into recruitment, there's no need for me to have my schooling on there, just my highest level of education. So you can tick whatever box that is, so your master's degree, but they don't care about your bachelor's unless it's directly related to your field of work. But that was important.
Sylvia replies, thank you so much for the advices. Great. I noticed that when I apply in Italy, they always want to know my age, but abroad, I've never been asked about it. Thanks.
So that's I can't speak for Italy. I have actually never recruited in Italy. I've probably recruited in 25 countries, but never Italy. It's illegal here to ask an age, and it's illegal in the USA and Australia and New Zealand. Just because, again, I don't know about Italy, but we have sort of protected characteristics here, so you can't be discriminated against for your religion, your marital status, and one of those is age. So I'm actually quite surprised that's not an issue in Italy, or maybe it's not be. But if you're applying overseas, don't have it on there and don't ask. And even if you're applying in Italy, don't have it on there. And if they ask, fine, say, but maybe make them ask rather than just giving them that information. But also, what's the point? Like, what are they learning from knowing that you're 18 or 25 or whatever? Seems silly.
We have another CV, James,
Sure.
from Carlo. And now I'm trying to share the Word document. Okay.
Okay.
It is not a PDF file.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I think Carlo has some experiences.
Yeah, I see. So a couple of things off the bat. Again, maybe I should have said this. There is no right or wrong answer for 1 page, 2 pages, 3 pages. It only starts to get wrong sort of at 4 or 5. Generally, I would aim for 1 as a recent graduate and 2 for pretty much everybody else. 3 is okay but only if you have the experience that everything on all 3 pages is adding value. So there's a few things here immediately that I think you could get rid of to make it 2 pages. We've talked about photos again. You can keep it or not, but it would free up some space by getting rid of it. These logos for your institutions or your universities are not necessary. Again, they don't add any value and they just take up a lot of space. You don't need to have your contact information 3 times over. That would free up some space. And then if we go to the 3rd page, please. So stuff like this is actually what you really want to avoid. Keep going a bit more on the IT and language bit.
Okay.
Yeah, so you see this graphic here. Number one, ATS software can't read that. So it doesn't know that you're saying 4 out of 5, 1 out of 5, 5 out of 5, whatever. And I feel like anything is, anything you put on there is kind of, it's not useless. I don't want to say useless, but it's meaningless in a lot of senses. What does 5 out of 5 mean? Does 5 out of 5 for data analysis mean that you cannot possibly get better at anything to do with data analysis? Obviously not. That's silly. Everyone can get better at some stuff, or whatever. And then, but the alternate is also not true, because if you put 4 out of 5, you're basically admitting that I'm not great at this or not perfect at this. So it also becomes meaningless. So I think you need to be, those sorts of graphics don't really add much value, and they don't know you as a person. They don't know what your sort of criteria for 4 out of 5 is. Some people are very harsh self-critics, and I know people, particularly with languages, I know people that are perfect in a second language, and they'll say, yeah, I'm okay. And I know some terrible second language speakers, and they'll go, yeah, I'm really good. I'm amazing at Spanish or whatever. So the sort of self-analyzing element of graphics like this, they're kind of meaningless. They don't really help with the ATS, and they take up space. So I wouldn't necessarily think that they're that necessary or add any value. So I would get rid of those. And again, if you go up a bit, I can have a look at some of the, I couldn't see the content before when it was smaller. If you can scroll up back to the top of that page, whoever's in charge of it.
Giuseppe?
If you can go right to the top of the whole thing. So again, really good summary. That's the right sort of length. I think there's no need to sort of describe yourself as a PhD student, because I can see you're a PhD student in 5 lines time. So you're not telling me anything there. Sort of, particularly when it's that close. If that was, and then what you need to make sure is you talk about raw material sustainability, polymer science. Don't really know what that is, but okay. You've got to make sure that all of that is relevant to whatever you're applying to. PhD students are actually an interesting one, because you're obviously super smart, really successful at what you do, but you sort of kind of have to take half a step back and realize that that's only interesting if it's relevant to whatever job you're going into. If it's not, then it's very easy for something you're clearly passionate about and talented in and proud of, to spend a lot of time talking about that. But if that's not going to be relevant to whatever you want to do next, then it's not helping the process. This isn't, I always say to people, and it's generally much more true for sort of older professionals, this isn't sort of a vanity autobiography. Let me speak in Italian terms. If I'm Giorgio Chiellini and I'm applying to a project manager's job or an ambassador's job with I don't know, a TV company or whatever he wants to do next, there is no point him having pages and pages of all of his performances and how many caps he's got for Italy and how many goals he's got from headers and whatever else. Those are really incredible things that he should be super proud of, and they are hard for people to do. But if I'm looking to hire him as a project manager or as an ambassador for joiners, then I don't care that he only got 7 yellow cards in his international career or whatever it may be. That's not devaluing what you do, and I don't want to devalue your PhD in any way. But the relevance is so important when applying to jobs, not just, hey, this is what I'm proud of, this is what I've achieved, this is great. It's about how does this apply to whatever you want to do, whatever you're applying to. So yeah, I think people often get sort of clouded their judgment because they're proud of what they've done. Yeah, you have salespeople talking about a sales award they got in 1987. Well, I don't think Dave, who's making this hiring decision, is that bothered by your 20-year-old achievement. So the same could be true here, could not be. But if you're applying to something that isn't really focused on turning waste into new resources or whatever, I'm not going to attempt to understand your PhD in these 5 minutes. But if it's not relevant, then it's not useful in this document alone. Which is why you should have a different CV for different jobs, because if you're applying to things that it is, then this is perfect. You should talk more about it. But if it's not, get rid of it.
James, Giorgio Chiellini has sent to me a picture for you.
Yeah, I've seen that. I was there.
It's not his CV, but I think it's one of the best action he did during his career with Italy.
I was there that day. It was very, very disappointing.
And James, so since you mentioned football, we can't avoid asking you, what football club are you supporting?
Interesting. I actually support quite a small team that play in the 2nd division in the UK called West Bromwich Albion.
Okay, and what about the Premier League?
Hard to say.
You're not following it?
My best friend supports Manchester City.
Ooh.
So this year I was an Arsenal fan. But I don't know. I live very close to Crystal Palace. Okay. So I guess I'd say them in the Premier League, but they're not really.
I'm supporting Inter Milan, so I don't want to hear about Manchester City.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you next week.
11th of June.
I'm with you. I don't like seeing my best friend's team so successful. So
okay, so are you supporting Inter Milan as well?
And Lukaku used to play for West Brom, so.
Yeah. Giuseppe is for AC Milan, so he's very disappointed about these days.
Tough week in the joiner's office last week, was it?
Oh, yes. Thank you, James.
Yeah, any more questions? I'm happy to answer. My email is in that in the chat if anybody wants sort of a private review or has any questions that they don't want to ask to the group.
Carlo says, thank you for the feedback. I never thought about having more CV depending on the job. Is there any difference for the ATS software between PDF or doc?
Good question. No, there isn't. But sending both is fine. I would always advise sending a PDF, particularly now that sort of half the world uses Office and half the world uses Mac. There can be issues with formatting changes or mobile devices. So if you send a PDF, there's never going to be any sort of anything going crazy. Word is sometimes very difficult. So yeah, I would always send PDF, but it doesn't harm your application to send it in document form either.
Okay, James, if we have 2 minutes, we have the last CV.
Saw the picture again.
By Rosa. Oh, it is in English. Good.
So that helps. Cool. So I like, if you're applying to technical job or whatever, I like separating skills and technical skills, particularly if you work in any job that needs weird softwares that most of the world won't have heard of, or if you've worked with like Salesforce or QuickBooks or any of those things. But again, only if it's important to the job you're applying to. I think I don't learn too much about you with this profile. It's sort of a good building blocks, but how have you deepened your knowledge and themes? Why or what new technologies are you interested in? That sort of stuff can be good there. And then if you've got a bit of space, it's always nice to put in a line or two about I am seeking, and then have it something that's related to whatever you're seeking, maybe why. So you can say, I'm looking to build upon my master's degree and work in whatever. So a little bit more depth to the summary section would probably be advisable. The work experience is a nice size, nicely formatted. I think I don't like using passive describing words. So like support or assisted or anything like that. Take a bit more ownership, even if it is a bit of a white lie. You can say that I did provide this, not I assisted with. It's a slight subtle language difference, but it sounds a lot more like you. So you say you analyze documents to so see here where it says analysis of documentation, you say I analyze documents to provide information to senior stakeholders about business process and ways to find efficiencies, something like that. And that possibly wasn't the most well formulated sentence as I was writing it on the fly, but just something like that is a little stronger than what you've said here. And then design of visual flowcharts or creation of PowerPoints, those are all great, but talk about numbers, how many of them you did or what results they had. Say I designed a PowerPoint with final suggestions for this process improvement. It resulted in 10% savings or whatever. Sort of having that a little bit more detail, anything quantifiable is always going to be a bit better than creative PowerPoints. Because at the minute, I wouldn't necessarily do this, but you could easily say that you created a rubbish PowerPoint. I have no idea whether that was effective. But if you said I created a PowerPoint with final suggestions that led to 6 process improvements, then I know that you had a positive impact, not just at the minute, it could be anything. I could be guessing. Same as we've talked about with the picture, whether it's necessary or not. I would replace the picture with your contact information from the bottom. Having it lost down there is not a problem. The ATS will pick it up. But if I'm the hiring manager, if you've got through the ATS and you've got through HR and I'm the hiring manager, I want it to be the easiest thing in the world for me to find your phone number and if I want to call you, not sort of at the bottom of the page. I mean, at the bottom of the page isn't exactly the worst I've seen, but you may as well have it in the most prominent part of the document. So that's what I think. Again, check everything on an ATS to make sure that the formatting works. But generally speaking, it looks fine. I think maybe your education and training is a size smaller than your professional experience, the bits in bold, but that's very minor. But try and have some sort of consistency. But no, otherwise exactly what we need. Probably don't need to capitalize Italian and English. Also, with languages, if your document is in that language, I probably wouldn't waste space telling people you speak that language. Because again, it's sort of telling me what I already know. If you've written a CV in English, then the assumption is you speak English. So again, it depends on how much space and if it's crammed in, but it's not necessarily the most value-adding bit of information. Because as I say, I know that you've written quite complex English sentences, therefore I assume you speak English. So there's no need to reinforce that, I guess.
Thank you. Perfect. Okay, James, it has been an honor for us. Thank you so much. And I just remember the t-shirt I'm wearing. Is this a coincidence? This is the logo of European 2020-21. where Giorgio Chiellini
Assaulted
Stop.
Bukayo Saka, I think is what we call it.
Giorgio Chiellini stopped the Three
That's-
Lions team.
That is everything I love about Italian football in 10 minutes was that just that pure passion, win at all costs. Doesn't matter if it annoys everybody else. It's perfect. I have a lot of respect for it. I have a lot of respect for both of those guys. So can't complain too much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you for your collaboration, your availability, but in general for your clarify when you have described every aspect of an impactful CV and a lot of things that could be crucial for the future of students, young graduates, but also people who have 1 or 2 years of experience.
Yeah, perfect. And yeah, as I say, anybody can feel free to get in touch. Emails there in the chat a couple of times. I'm sure they can go through you if they need to. But yeah, happy to answer anything else if anybody needs.
No, I think there are not any more questions.
Perfect.
So yeah, that you can reach out to James by his email. And thanks a lot for attending this online experience and for listening to all of these advices. Thank you very much, James.
Cool. Thanks very much, guys. I'll speak to you all later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.